Chapter 10 of The Browning Boys by Pansy. This recording is in the public domain. Chapter 10. A Bad Bargain. You have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam. If the Lord be God, follow him; but if Baal, then follow him. The Lord, he is the God. The Lord, he is the God. And after the fire a still, small voice. Thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. Mrs. Eastman stood in the back doorway, and Aleck Browning, cap in hand, stood waiting respectfully for her to finish her sentence. "You see," she was saying, "I am more particular about Sunday than any other time in the week. We ought to be, you know, seeing it as the best day. Mr. Eastman is at home then, and Henry, and neither of them gets very good dinners on other days. So if I can get my berries and peas fresh and nice, I am willing to pay a better price for them. The ones we get from the carts on Saturdays seem worse than any we have through the week. They gather up all sorts, I suppose, for Sunday trade. Well, we'll consider it a bargain, shall we? A penny more on a quart than you can get anywhere else, and they are to be picked fresh every Sunday morning. It won't take more than an hour these long mornings, and you live so near the garden you can slip in and out, you and Ben, without being noticed." Two things in that last sentence to consider. In the first place, why should he care about slipping into places without being noticed? He had not been in the habit of thinking whether he was noticed or not. Then that phrase, "you and Ben." He had not thought of Ben helping. Now that he did think about it, he knew that Ben wouldn't. But why not? Suppose it was Sunday? Didn't folks have to eat on Sunday? Yes, but a good many people managed to get along without buying things to eat. His mother, he knew, would never allow the milkman's bell to be rung at their gate on Sunday, and milk was more important than berries and peas. But what harm was there in going quietly into Mr. Harper's garden on Sunday morning and picking a couple of quarts of berries for Mrs. Eastman when she wanted them so badly and was willing to pay a good price? As for the peas, they grew in their own garden. He could think over his Sabbath school lesson while he picked. Well, for the matter of that, why didn't his mother get out Mrs. Eastman's calico dress she was making and sew on it? She could think about the sermon while she sewed. "Thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord." Who said that? Aleck looked about him, almost expecting to see someone. Whether it was his own reference to "thinking over" the Sabbath school lesson while he picked Sabbath berries, or whatever it was, that verse came and stood out before him and insisted on being thought about. He walked for a long distance without speaking. "If it is so, I have sold myself cheap. A penny on a quart." This he said aloud after walking the entire length of the street. It was Saturday morning, and when he first heard Mrs. Eastman's offer, he had expected to be happy all day over the added penny. But when he looked it all over at night, he thought it the most uncomfortable day he had spent in a long while. Sold? He, Aleck Browning, who prided himself on his honesty and industry and manliness generally. Sold to do evil! He could not believe it possible. He would not for a long time own that it was evil. But that sentence about slipping in and out without being noticed seemed to hover around him. Finally, he told himself to say frankly whether he was willing to be noticed. Suppose the minister should come through the woods while he was picking the berries? Suppose his Sabbath school teacher should come along just as he was delivering 4 quarts of peas at Mrs. Eastman's back door? "Thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord." There came that verse again at the most critical moment. What was the minister's sight or the teacher's sight compared with the Lord's? Aleck ate very little dinner, and especially he would not touch peas. His mother was worried. and when at tea-time he refused blackberries, she looked really distressed, and questioned as to whether his head ached or his back. No, his conscience ached, but this he did not say. This, however, he did within an hour after tea. He walked with quick step and uplifted head to Mrs. Eastman's back door, and in plain, courteous language, made that lady understand that he must repent of his bargain. He had decided that it would not be right to sell goods on Sunday. She was just a trifle vexed. She told Aleck that it seemed to her that his goodness had come late in the day. This was so undoubtedly true that there was nothing to answer with but blushes. Then she said that it was most unfortunate for her that he had promised in the morning, for now she had lost her chances for Sunday supplies. To this Aleck returned eager answer that he would pick the peas and berries at once, and bring them to her just at dusk, when, the evening dew fresh on them, they would keep, his mother thought, almost as well as though picked in the morning. But Mrs. Eastman would have none of this. So it was with a somewhat sorrowful heart that Aleck turned away. Still his conscience felt light and glad. No more hints that he had sold himself troubled his heart. Yet he walked on, scarcely noticing where he went, until suddenly he stopped short and said aloud, "Well, why not?" Another Bible verse had kept him company during the walk. "If the Lord be God, follow him." A familiar verse. He had heard Effie repeat it many times during the last few weeks. It was not strange that he should remember it, but it did seem strange that he should never have thought seriously about the direction in it until this evening. Now here was a question to answer. Why not follow him? Why not begin now? He knew he meant to be a servant of the Lord some time. Why not settle the matter at once? He must have stood there for several minutes. Then he turned around and walked toward home slowly. It was time he was getting home, but he was not ready to reach there yet. Something was being decided. What if he should decide the wrong way? At last, just as a new star shot into the sky, or at least appeared in sight, he quickened his steps, and they became firm steps which meant decision. So did his voice as he spoke aloud again to the listening stars, no, to the angels who were waiting to carry the news to heaven. "I mean to do it." End of chapter 10.